This is music reading for vocals, for singers. Reading music consists of reading both the pitch of the music and the rhythm of the music. First, we're going to talk about where to find notes in a keyboard. As a vocalist, you need to identify the notes you're singing by matching them on an instrument that you know exactly where the note is. And for most people, that's a keyboard, and you can find that on a piano, of course, on a laptop computer, or on a phone application. We're going to start in this lesson only with just reading pitch and not rhythm. Because if you do both of them at the same time, it's like riding a bicycle. It's harder. And afterwards, then you should just practice. Let's look at the keyboard so we know where to find the notes. Keyboards are arranged with black keys and white keys, and there are groups of 2 black keys and 3 black keys. And this tells us where everything is. If you're looking at a piano or the default view on most apps of a keyboard, you'll see that middle C, or the first C that you get made aware of, and all C's are to the left of the 2 key groups. So you see the 2 black keys, you go to the one to the left of it, and that's where C is. And that C shows up there, and the C above it, at the next set of 2 keys, is where the next C is at. The other clue is where the F is. F is to the left of the 3 key groups, and it shows up wherever you see 3 keys, to the left of it. Putting this all together, you can find out where all the notes are, and remembering that notes only go from A alphabetically up to G and then start all over again. So you know where the C is, you know where the F is, you can fill in all the blanks, and that pattern repeats as far as the keyboard goes, up and down. Let's now look at how to read pitches in music. We're going to read pitches off of music that looks like this. You'll see there are 5 lines in a staff, and a staff is just a place where we draw notes. You'll see things to the left called clefs, which tells us where the notes are to be found on the staff, and some other things we'll cover later on. Each staff is horizontally divided into measures, that is a piece of a staff, or a bar, because this line is called a bar line, and it's a collection of things in one group. And it's important for reading pitches that we'll find out later. As a vocalist, you may or may not see other clefs. It's possible, but we're not going to focus on those. But be aware they exist, and you need to know that if you see a different clef, the notes on the staff will be in different spots. So on the staff, this is where we find certain notes. And there is a note on each line, and there is a note in each space between the 2 lines. The bottom line is E. The next line up is G, and that's why this thing over here to the left is called a G clef, because you'll see it in circles at the bottom where G is. The next line is B, and this is going up in pitch, so we're starting from here. E, G, B, D, and F. Remember, we know where the notes are on the keyboard, because if C is to the left of the 2, then D is the next white one, and E is the next white one, and that's where E is. Right there. The G is up here, because it's one past the F. The B is here because it's one less than C. The D is here because it's one after D. And the F is there because it is left of the 3. To learn this, there is a memory tool people use that says every good boy does fine, which corresponds to those 5 notes. An alternative way of doing it is to think about just the spaces between the lines that spells the word F-A-C-E, face. With everything we've learned, now we know how to put all the notes on the staff and where they are on the keyboard. That's an A, because that's F-A-C-E, and then all the way up to G, because notes only go to G, alphabetically from A to G. And then start all over again. If notes go higher or lower than the 5 lines, we just add little lines as if the staff kept going. What's this note here? Well, if the top line was every good boy does fine, or if it was F-A-C-E, then this top line is F. The note on top of the staff is G. And the note here is A. For many singers, this could be your top note, but not always. Also, if we go down and add a line, this note here is middle C, the first note we talked about at the beginning of the discussion. Let's talk about the flats and the sharps, which are the black keys, which we haven't talked about because you'll see why in a second. So flats and sharps, and the flat is this symbol here. It looks like a small B, and the sharp, which looks like the pound sign. These are usually the black keys, but not always. It's pretty rare for a vocalist to see the other versions of these characters on other than the black keys, but it's possible, but let's not get into that now. The sharp sign means we go 1/2 step up or to the right, the next key to the right. So if I have an F, which is that key, the key which is to the left of the 3 blacks, if I see the sharp sign, it says go to the next key to the right, and it's not the next white key, because the next key up is the black key, which is F sharp. So it's F plus what it's called a half step. If it was G, they'd call it a full step, but don't worry about that. That makes F sharp. The flat sign means 1/2 step down, or the next key to the left. So if I were to play this B on the keyboard, the next key to the left is the black key, which is B flat. So you might have guessed, but let's be clear about it, that each one of these black keys can have 2 different names. This F sharp is also G flat, because F, going up 1/2 step or 1 note to the right, is F sharp, or if I start with G and I go 1 key down to the left, which is flat, I arrive at the same black key, which is the first of the 3 black keys. The same thing would go for this key up here, which is both E flat, down from E, or D sharp, which is 1 key up from D. One more sign or symbol you should be familiar with in reading music is the natural sign. I can't even describe this kind of a square with whiskers. And this sign removes the effect of a flat or a sharp. And that won't make any sense until we show it in practice. But just think of it as cancels. If I see a sharp sign, I put a natural on it, then I'm playing the note without the sharp sign, or the same thing with the flat sign. Let's apply the flat, sharp, and natural symbols in what we will see as a key signature. The key signature or rule for the music is shown here at the far left. And there could be a number of flats or a number of sharps, but not a combination of both. This is the rule for all notes on this line. In this case, there is a flat sitting on the B line, which means that all B's are to be played as B flat. So that's the pitch that we're supposed to see. And the rule is every B is played B flat, and if there was other flats, those notes would be flat as well. In every octave, unless you see another sign. This starts over every measure. Let's apply this. It's pretty clear that these four are B flat. Nothing's changed. In this measure here, however, we start B flat, but the next note has a natural sign, which means it's going to be one note higher, or this B here. Because the B flat effect has been taken off, and this rule will stay in effect in this measure until I see something else, until you see another sign. Therefore, the next note after that is also B natural. And here's another sign that says, take it back to B flat. Since the measure is over, we know that the rule goes back into effect, which means this is now B flat yet again. B flat, of course, there's no new sign. I see a B natural. Now here's an important rule, is that this natural sign applies to this B, and only this B, on this line. Because down here, this note is also a B, but it's B flat. This natural sign only cancels out the flat effect for this octave and this octave alone. This is another B, and so it doesn't get affected by the sign, therefore it's still B flat per the rule right here. That might be a little bit confusing, and by the way, out in the music world, there is confusion on this between classical music and jazz music, but for this purpose, we're going to use the classical rules. And so in this measure here, we see that since the bar line starts again, the B flat rule is in effect. This is B flat. And this lower B now is explicitly notated as B natural until the next sign shows up. It's B flat again. And this B flat is still the same because no rule has affected it in this measure. One last rule to note for reading pitch is actually a rhythmic rule, except it's important because it changes pitches, is that the rule of the change from this B flat to B natural would not usually extend outside its measure unless the note is tied to the exact same note in another measure. So here the measure is ended, there's a bar line. So here the measure has ended with a bar line, but the two notes on exactly the same pitch are tied together. Therefore, this B and this B are both B natural. When we learn in the rhythm video that this just makes the note longer, but the point is we don't change the pitch. So that's why we have to mention it here just while we're learning how to use pitch. A little bit more on the key signatures is that I said that I've been showing just B flat on the B line, but you can see here there's sharps on the C and on the F lines as a different key signature. Here is one with 4 sharps. And note that the G, so this is C, this is D, this is F. The fourth one is G, which is the space above the top line. And even though it shows a G up here, this rule applies, like this at the top. It applies to all Gs in all octaves. So all Gs in every octave, like this down here, of course, is G because every good, right? Every good G clef is played as G sharp. So G sharp in all octaves until you see a sign. Here's a case where we have 6 flats. So here is a D, it's played as D flat. Here is an A, it's played as A flat. Here's a G, it's played as G flat. So everything you know how to read pitch in music, now that you know where the pitches are on the keyboard, is you look at the key signature. In each measure, look at the rule and apply the rule, unless you see a sign, and then use that rule to change it for the duration of that measure until you see another sign, and it goes back to the rule in the next measure unless the 2 notes are tied together in exactly the same note. So finally, the last thing to do is to practice. Grab any piece of music, grab your keyboard, sit in front of your piano, and try to figure out what the pitches are using the simple rules we've talked about